Both the House and the Senate have introduced a pair of companion bills that they call the Go Safe Act that would outlaw pretty much every magazine-fed firearm. Hey everybody, Yankee here. I know everybody out there has probably heard by now from several different YouTube gun channels that you need to be outraged and terrified because the U.S. Congress, both the House and the Senate, have introduced a pair of companion bills that they call the Go Safe Act that would outlaw pretty much every magazine-fed firearm. If it takes a detachable magazine, it's pretty much going to be illegal. Now, is this true? Should you be outraged? Should you be scared? Is this what this legislation would really do? Well, I spent a lot of time reading that legislation tonight, both the House bill and the Senate bill. They're not all that long, but I'll tell you one thing, they're very confusing. And after reading it, I think I know less about them now after reading them several times, going back and referencing the things they're changing, trying to reference that to what was already there and how's what they're adding different and how are their definitions different. I was getting nowhere after a couple of hours. I was thinking that I know less after studying it than I did before. And I guarantee you, this is on purpose. The Bloomberg people love to write legislation like this that really confuses everybody. It makes it sound like on the surface, well, we're only going after these certain things, but they write things in such a vague and confusing way, and they write like 50 different things that sometimes contradict themselves. Like it says that any item that uses gas to operate its system, but, recoil items, handguns that use recoil don't count. Well, that's using gas. Still, an explosion, the energy travels through air pressure and all that other stuff. Explosion, that's gas being used there. So I don't know how they can exempt certain firearms. They all use the explosion from the bullet and the gas and the energy produced from that actually moves to cycle the slide. But it's, like I said, confusing. So is it fake news that they're doing this? Actually, I don't think it is. I think at the end of the day, it would ban most guns that take magazines. Because even though they put forward all these exemptions, like, shotguns don't count, and, these guns don't count, semi-automatic guns, that, don't take more than this many rounds, those are exempt. And as long as it's just recoil racking the slide. But all these other things, these rifles that use gas power and these handguns that use gas power, which is basically, I think they're going after the smaller versions of ARs and stuff that are considered handguns. So what you might say at this point, when you're reading it, you would think, well, this is an assault weapons ban, is what this is. They're assault weapons ban. They're trying to bring that back. They're just trying to do it through changing definitions and making it seem like, well, we're not really doing an assault weapons ban, but that's basically what it is. Only it's worse, because not only would it affect a lot of rifles and a lot of pistols, but it could affect handguns too. Because if they decided to get real creative with how they were interpreting things and say, well, it said for recoil guns that, don't use gas, well, this clearly isn't, because, it's like I said, it's really vague and not all that scientific the way they wrote it. So they could eventually enforce that on any gun. And this is actually kind of like an assault weapons ban and a magazine ban put together. But instead of doing the ban saying, the magazines are banned, it's just any gun that can take the magazine. Let's say you got a handgun that holds 17 rounds. Well, that actually wouldn't be exempt, because they said they specifically listed the number of rounds that a handgun can have and be exempt, a semi-automatic handgun. So that handgun, if it had 17 rounds, wouldn't be exempt. It would be outlawed. It'd be illegal. Not the magazine. You couldn't buy it at your local gun shop, but only get a 10-round magazine. You can't say, well, in my state, I can only get the 10-round magazine. No, because of the fact it can still take the 17-round magazine, it's outlawed. Anything that has the ability to take a magazine that holds more than a certain number of rounds, even if it's an exempt gun otherwise, would still be prohibited by the way this is written. So if you've got like that FNX or whatever it is from FN and it's got 17-round magazine, you can't have that no more. You can't even have it with a reduced magazine. Because instead of outlawing the magazines, they're outlawing guns that can take them. And not just guns that can take them or are made to take them, even if they've been modified to where they don't, like the buttons and stuff in California to make the mags non-detachable and all this other stuff. Or magazines that are made to where they don't, guns that are made to where they won't take the higher magazines. If they can be converted back or in any way converted to be able to take those magazines, well, then they're still going to be illegal. So all they'd have to do is say, well, yeah, that gun only takes 15 rounds, but all you'd have to do is slap an extension on the bottom of the magazine, a little piece that makes it like the grip, and slap it in there, and now it fits perfectly. It doesn't stick out or anything. Now that gun's banned. Any gun that you could do that with. So any gun they basically make a extended magazine for under this ban could be deemed illegal. And you couldn't have it. Not that it comes with that, or that it ever had that. Let's say you've got a gun that always, like you've got a PPK. But tomorrow someone designs an extended magazine for it, takes 16 rounds and has a little aluminum piece on it that makes it just a really big grip. Well, that could be banned because that gun's capable of taking that. You can't have any guns that even have the possibility of being able to fire basically more than 10 rounds in most cases. So this is really bad. Really, really, really bad legislation. They're really not exaggerating how bad this could be. Well, they're exaggerating a little bit because it's not all detachable round magazines and stuff. But it could be if someone just had a little ingenuity and made parts for them based on what I'm reading. And like I said, I'm not a scholar. I think most of you know that. Most of you probably don't even think of graduated grade school. And I can't really make heads or tails out of this, but from what I can tell, pretty much any gun that does take a magazine could be made illegal based on this law and could be interpreted as illegal based on this law. So it is really bad legislation, really unconstitutional. Now, should you be outraged and scared? Well, no. Because this is just legislation that Bloomberg and his other groups like that give to these politicians to keep them on the payroll. We want them doing something for the money they're getting. Give them something to do, and it's meant to outrage people. It's meant to get you angry. It's meant to get you afraid. And that's one of the reasons the YouTube heads love to promote that, because they want you to go out and buy merchandise. Most of them are tied to the industry, and they're like, if you want to buy an AR, you better go do it now. You better buy it today. If you can't afford it, you better take out a second mortgage and go get 10 of them. Because they want to create a buying frenzy. Because it's beneficial to them and the people that pay their checks, write their checks. So, no, don't panic. Another reason you don't want to panic, not only because it doesn't do anybody any good, is because these bills have almost no chance of passing. In fact, even govtrack.us, that tracks bills and legislation and says what chances they have of coming out of committee, what chances they have been passed, gives them both a big goose egg on chances of passing. There's just no conceivable pathway for these things to actually become law. In fact, they only have a 1% chance of even getting out of committee. They're clearly theater. They're keeping these politicians busy, giving them something to do, trying to assuage the anti-gunners so that they keep giving money to the anti-gun groups, because that's big business, that's big money. Even, I think, more money than the people that make money off the big buying frenzies. The people on our side that love the buying frenzies. They don't make as much money as the anti-gunners do over this stuff. Plus, it's also designed for one other thing that we really don't need to fall for. It's designed to confuse you. It's designed to make you angry. It's designed to make you scared. And hopefully, some of you will go out in the streets and do something crazy because you're angry, confused, and scared. And then they can put every camera in the country on you and go, look, see what these people are doing? This bill needs to even be more extreme. Or else more things like this are going to happen. That's one of their main goals with a lot of this legislation, is to rile you up to the point where you do something stupid. And unfortunately, there's so many people in the gun community that are willing to help do that because it'll sell more ARs. It'll sell more high-cap magazines, high-capacity magazines. It'll sell just more everything. It'll create a buying frenzy. And they get a percentage of that. When they do those advertisements and they promote a product, they give you a discount code. That's not to save you money. The manufacturer actually would have sold it to you cheaper if they weren't involved, because they add on what they're giving this guy to the price. So they get a cut of that. So they want you to panic. They want you to go buy. And they don't care if it hurts the Second Amendment or hurts the community or causes someone out there to, because they're confused and angry and scared, to do something stupid and pay the price for it. They don't care about that. They care about bottom line. If you remember watching, there was a YouTube video with all the biggest gun channels in the industry at the time in there, and every one of them, got upset when a few of them were talking, well, all that matters at the end of the day is how much money we make, right? And people in the audience were screaming, and they're all like, we only say that quietly between ourselves. You're not supposed to say it out loud. So don't think for a second they got your best interest at heart. They want you to be scared. They want you to be angry. That's why they represent these things as a little more dangerous than they really are. Even though, like I said, really bad legislation, but it ain't going to pass. That doesn't mean you don't pay attention. You still pay attention. In fact, you all should be paying more attention. You should be more involved. You should be paying attention to where the fights are and doing what you can to help. Go directly to the people fighting the fight, not the big organizations that say, give us the money and we'll give them what we don't need of it. Stay involved, stay aware, and stay aware of things like this. Let your senator know how you feel. Let your congressman know how you feel. But still, there's not much chance of it passing. In fact, it's pretty much zero. So this is something you need to be aware of. But you also have to understand why they do these things and the tactics. And one of them is to make you scared, to make you angry, to get you to do something stupid. So they got a catalyst for another, movement like they had in 2012, where everybody was like, yeah, assault weapons ban, gun control, blah, blah, blah. It was lucky we were so lucky. Not lucky, actually. We got out of it without any more gun control because we so banded together, became involved, and did stuff. Got things done, paid attention, didn't lose our heads. There were some people that were trying to get you to lose your head. If we had we would have ended up with assault weapons ban, magazine limits, everything. But luckily, somehow, we managed to get it together, fight together, and stay together, and keep it real, to say, and, stick to the topic and not be crazy. So we need to do that now. Pay attention. Don't let them manipulate you. Neither the anti-gun side that wants you to go out and do something crazy, or the pro-gun side online that doesn't care if you do something crazy as long as you spend more money than you can afford to. And as long as they get tons of views while making you angry so that they can raise their advertising rates. That's why they care about views, so they can raise their advertising rates. But like I said, this bill is very badly written, very confusing, very dangerous, extremely unconstitutional, and is some of the worst legislation I've read in a long time, what I can understand of it. But it isn't going to pass, even though we definitely need to pay attention and make sure it doesn't pass. But we don't need to panic. We don't need to run out and buy everything you're afraid you're not going to be able to get tomorrow, because this is going to have no effect on us in the long run, unless, of course, we do the wrong things and give the bad guys a reason to point at us and say, this is why we need more gun control.